All right, guys, today's video is everything you need to know about shooting ProRes Raw on the iPhone 17 Pro, how to use it, what you'll need, and if it's even worth shooting. Now, this is going to be a long video. I'll make sure to timestamp all the important parts in case you just want to jump to the end to hear my final thoughts. And I'm actually filming this entire thing on the iPhone 17 Pro in ProRes Raw, and I'm already dreading how massive these files are going to be because it just eats storage. But before we dive in, a quick shout out to Freewell for sponsoring this video. They sent over a ton of awesome gear and accessories for the iPhone 17 Pro. They got a new case, grips, filters, and even an anamorphic lens. So yeah, we'll get to that later in the video. Let's jump into it. So I've got to say, I think the iPhone 17 Pro is easily the best phone out there for shooting video right now. I know there's a bunch of Androids that can shoot log now, and even with a third-party app like Motion Cam, you can shoot raw video. They look decent, but from what I'm seeing from the iPhone in terms of highlight roll-off, color science, and just overall consistency, looks most natural and closer to what a mirrorless camera would look like when shooting Apple log. So this year, Apple added a new log profile called Apple Log 2. Doesn't necessarily give the phone more dynamic range over Apple Log 1, but I do find the colors are nicer, the skin tones are better, and it just has a better overall polished looking image. And the truth is, it's getting harder and harder to tell what was shot on a phone versus a proper camera. Now, when Apple introduced Apple Log with the iPhone 15 Pro, it completely changed how people thought about shooting video, me included. People are out there shooting movies now. But this year, they've taken it a step further with ProRes Raw, which is a format you'd typically only find in higher-end mirrorless cameras. Now, you can't record ProRes Raw from the native camera app. You can shoot Apple Log 2 with regular ProRes in the native camera app, but not ProRes Raw. You're gonna need a third-party app for that. Apple has their own called the Final Cut camera, which supports both ProRes and ProRes Raw and even OpenGate. Super easy to use, it's pretty simple. It's similar to the native camera app, but not quite the same. But if you want something with more power, full manual controls, waveforms, zebras, definitely recommend the Blackmagic camera app, which is what I'm using right now. It even has anamorphic D-squeeze and a wireless feed. I'm viewing the wireless feed on my iPad here. And that's what I've been using the last couple of years since it came out. It's free, it's a very well thought out app. It's kind of like shooting on a Blackmagic camera. So what exactly is ProRes Raw and why would you want to shoot with it? So typically when you're shooting raw video, that's just the straight sensor data coming right off the sensor. The camera isn't doing a lot of processing. That way you're getting as much data as possible to work with in post, especially for color grading. Now in Apple's case, I'm not entirely sure if they're doing some kind of extra processing behind the scenes, because obviously ProRes Raw isn't true raw, like it would be in like a Red Cinema camera. And I feel like the image is really clean for raw video from a tiny phone sensor, so I have no idea what magic they're doing, what's going on, if any at all, but that's basically the gist of it. The main thing is it's giving you a cleaner, more flexible file to work with later in post, again, especially if you're color grading or adjusting exposures and stuff like that. You're capturing as much of the information as you can from that sensor, which is really handy in post. So you're capturing as much information as possible, which means better highlight and shadow recovery, more control over color. You can change your white balance after, you can even change your ISO after. It's less compressed than the standard ProRes or even the H.265. It's a more advanced format, but it does come with some trade-offs, which we'll get into later. Something else that's really cool that they added in the iPhone 17 Pro is the ability to shoot in OpenGate in ProRes Raw, which is crazy that a phone can do this. Now, basically that means you're recording the entire sensor area instead of cropping it down to a 16:9. So Blackmagic recently also added OpenGate as an option if you're not shooting in ProRes Raw, if you just want to shoot regular ProRes or H.265, but you won't get the full 4.2K resolution. If you're shooting in H.265 or ProRes, you're gonna get something like a 1920 by 1440. Now that still gives you the extra space on the top of the bottom of the frame for cropping and reframing, but it won't be as detailed as you would get from shooting ProRes Raw in OpenGate. Outside of having the option of reframing for vertical and horizontal video with OpenGate, it's also awesome for shooting anamorphic because you get the full sensor. Before we jump into the anamorphic setup and shooting OpenGate, I want to show you everything that Freewell actually sent me because there's a ton of stuff on top of that anamorphic lens they sent. And yeah, let's get into that. This is the Pro Filmmaker case. I actually really like the design of this. It's nice and slim and sleek for a phone case that accepts screw-in lenses and magnetic filters. This next accessory is really cool. It's a Bluetooth selfie grip. So it clips on like a grip on your phone. It's got an Arca Swiss base plate, and you can extend out the selfie stick, which is really cool. And because it's Bluetooth, you can toggle record on and off and use it kind of like a grip like you would with a camera. And this is the Pro Hybrid Filter Kit, and I think that everybody should have this. In here, you got a lot of different filters. So you got a hard stop 32 ND filter, you got a variable ND circular polarizer, you got a glow mist, you got a gradient filter, as well as a 1 to 10 stop variable ND, which is super nice to have. And the cool thing is it's all kind of quick swap magnetic, and you kind of slide in these filters in behind the main filter. And the cool thing is it's all magnetic, so if you want to take that on and off, you can, or if you want to snap on your magnetic variable ND, you can do that as well. This next accessory is pretty intense, and this is for people that want to go crazy pro with their setup. And this is the Pro SSD hub. It's got 60 watts of power input, 10 gigabits per second USB-C for transfer, as well as another USB-C input for accessories. And this also can house an M.2 drive. So I got an NVMe drive here. It's a 2 terabyte. It doesn't come with it, obviously. This is my own drive, but you can go up to 8 terabytes with this thing. And then you have full storage options right here, built right into the hand grip. And this hand grip's Bluetooth, just like the other one. You can also rotate the phone vertical or horizontal inside of that grip. And on the bottom, it also has an Arca Swiss plate. So you kind of got everything built into this thing. And lastly is the 1.55x anamorphic lens. And the cool thing about this lens is it comes with different filters to change the color of the streaks or the flares. So you've got gold, blue, or neutral, and it comes by default with gold or amber. But I prefer neutral. It just looks a little bit more natural, and that's what I use for all of these tests. But it is cool that you can change the color of the flare and the streak. So if you want that Michael Bay blue flare, you can do that. So this lens is designed to screw into the case, and it looks best on the main camera. The cool thing about this lens is it also has a level bubble on it, and it comes with a little Allen key that you can set the level, and you need to make sure this thing is level so you don't get any warping in the image, as well as having nice horizontal flares. So because we're shooting anamorphic, we need to de-squeeze the image, and the cool thing with the Blackmagic app is you can set it to 1.55x and they'll de-squeeze it for you. So as I mentioned, the other big reason why you'd want to shoot OpenGate is if you want to shoot anamorphic lenses. It gives you that wider cinematic look with those horizontal Michael Bay flares, and then it gives you that kind of that stretched bokeh, that anamorphic look. So if you've ever shot anamorphic before, this image is going to be recorded stretched from the lens. So you can either film it that way and de-squeeze it later in post, or in the Blackmagic camera app, you can actually de-squeeze it in real time to see the proper aspect ratio while you're shooting. And the cool thing is it outputs the image that way already de-squeezed for you. So when you're shooting anamorphic and OpenGate, you're going to be using that full sensor height. So when it's de-squeezed, you get that beautiful, nice widescreen cinematic look without losing any resolution or having to crop in on anything. Also, that anamorphic lens has a 58mm front filter thread, and I wanted to use my variable ND with it. I have a 67mm filter, so I used a step-up ring from 58 to 67, but I think because that adapter is pushing the filter a little bit further off the lens, there was so much vignetting, I didn't even want to use it because it looks so bad. So I didn't use any ND on the anamorphic footage. But if you had a 58mm ND, it would cause less vignetting, especially when you're shooting OpenGate with that lens. So when you're shooting anamorphic and OpenGate, you're gonna see a lot of barrel distortion, a lot of softness near the corners. Now, some people might like that slightly imperfect vintage look. It does have a vibe, and it's pretty cool. But I think the main thing is you're using the 24mm lens that's on the main camera on top of my anamorphic lens, which is even wider. And it's obvious that there's gonna be a lot of barrel distortion, especially when you're shooting OpenGate. And one thing I noticed is that when you step out of ProRes Raw and you're shooting just regular ProRes or H.265, you can actually switch to the 2x camera, so 48mm, and that combo looks really good with this anamorphic lens, less barrel distortion. I'd say it's kind of the sweet spot for the anamorphic look. You get a little bit more compression as well. Anyway, let's jump into DaVinci Resolve, take a look at what it's like to work with these files and see what we can get. All right, so I have some clips here that I shot in Apple ProRes Raw as well as Apple Log 2. So you can see here, Apple ProRes Raw, 24 frames per second, 4.2K. There's no right or wrong way of color grading. There's just different methods, and I'm gonna show you what I typically do. And because we shot this in RAW, I just want to show you the RAW tab. So we're gonna go over here, and if you click on clip here, it's gonna open up some of our options. Now, different cameras have different options when they shoot different versions of RAW. So right now we do have the option to change ISO in Resolve, and we could go up to ISO 100, but obviously I shot it at ISO 50. I'll leave it at 100 just for the sake of showing you what you could do with this. And then the other cool thing is you can actually change the color space. So this is Apple Log 2, but if you wanted to, you could change it to Panasonic V-Log, Sony S-Log 3, and then that way you can actually match this to your bigger camera pretty easy with similar LUTs. But we're just gonna leave it at Apple Log 2 right now because I wanna show you what it's like to work with that. You can do your exposure bias if you wanna adjust that a little bit, or you can actually change your white balance temperature here as well. So we're gonna go to the color wheels here. And right out the gate, you can see we've got perfect exposure. Everything's like dead middle right now. And so we got lots to work with here, tons of dynamic range. But the first thing I like to do is a CTS, which is a color space transform. We're gonna put that on the first node here. We shot this in Apple Log 2. One thing I'm finding though is when I go to Apple Log 2 here, it's not quite what I want. And I think that iPhone is actually shooting in Rec 2020 for HDR stuff. And I find that I like how that looks better on the skin tone. So I'm gonna leave it like that. So the next thing we wanna choose is our output color space. And I'm gonna choose DaVinci Wide Gamut and DaVinci Intermediate. And as far as I know, this gives us the most dynamic range to work with when we're color grading. Now I'm gonna do one more CTS as our output, and I'm gonna go Option S to make a new node, put another color space transform on it. And this time we're gonna go DaVinci Wide Gamut, DaVinci Intermediate, because that's what we're converting here. And then we're gonna go Rec 709, because we're just doing SDR for YouTube. And then Rec 709A because I'm working on a Mac. Now, I think the newest version of Resolve fixes this, but I'm still doing it anyway. So you can see right out the gate, that looks really nice, but obviously our shadows are looking very crushed and it's not really showing on the parade here, but we can lift those shadows up. But first, I actually want to add a couple more nodes before I make any more adjustments. So we're going to add 4 extra nodes. So the first one I usually do is my exposure. So we're going to call it exposure. The next one I typically do with my contrast. And the third one I typically do my saturation. And then this one I usually do as like a second adjustment option. So if I need to tweak a couple more things, I'm just gonna call it second. And then sometimes, I don't even know if this is the right way of doing it, I'll do another node after the last color space transform. And I'll actually use that for my look or my LUT. For now, I will maybe just leave that off. I don't want to make it too confusing for some people. We'll keep it pretty simple here. I even have an even simpler option, which I'll show you after this. But in here, let's adjust our exposure. And even in here, I'll adjust the shadows sometimes. So you can bring those shadows up. Just to show you how much dynamic range you have to work with here. Look at that. I can pull those shadows back. You can see everything on my jacket. Now there is a little bit of noise, but it's still pretty dang clean. So bring the shadows back down. And I do notice that some of the blacks are getting close to clipping here. They're not too bad though, but I'm gonna lift them a little bit. And what's crazy is we still have a ton of room on the highlights here, and we're not clipping anything, not even on my forehead, but we could bring the highlights down. Then in here with our contrast, we can bump the contrast up a little bit. For this, I'm gonna leave that. And saturation, we can bump that up a little bit. Looking good. And then on my second adjustments, sometimes what I would do is I would play around with the skin tone and stuff. We can go to our color slice tool here, and the skin tones here, you can see where they're sitting. If you want to add a little bit more saturation to them, you can change the hue or the tint. Let's leave that there for now. It's looking pretty good. And that's just a couple of quick adjustments, and you can see what that looks like. Looking pretty good, looking pretty clean. It's crazy what Apple Log looks like. Looking pretty good, but let's move on to another clip here. All right, so same thing. I shot this in ProRes Raw, but this is obviously not an OpenGate. This would have been 17:9. And instead of dropping the color space transform on it, I want to show you how quick it can be to just literally slap a LUT on this. Now I made my own custom conversion LUT, and specifically for Apple Log 2 to Rec 709. Boom, just like that. Now, this has a little bit more of a cinematic look to it. This wouldn't be exactly the same as what you would get from Apple to convert your Apple Log 2 to Rec 709. But if you just want to do a quick grade, slap that onto whatever, it looks awesome. All right, so I got 2 images up here. I got the H.265 in Apple Log 2 versus the ProRes Raw in Apple Log 2, just to see the difference in terms of color and dynamic range, and if there even is much of a difference. So as you can see right off the bat, they don't even look that close in terms of color. You can see there's a bit of a different color tint to my skin tone and the blues in the sky versus the Apple ProRes Raw. Now, it also looks like the ProRes Raw is a little bit flatter as well. And so basically what I want to do is just slap my conversion LUT on it and see if it does anything different on the ProRes Raw. So we're going to go down here to LUT, Apple Log 2, Rec 709. We'll go to ProRes Raw here, and we're going to go to LUT, and we're going to add Apple Log 2. And it's way different. A lot of greens in the shadows, a lot of greens in the blues. Actually, just overall a lot more green. If you look, there's a lot more magenta in my jacket. If I wanted to match them, it wouldn't be too hard. I'm doing this quick just to show you the difference. So I'm adding a little bit more magenta to the skin tones. The greens look pretty similar, but the sky is completely different. So we're going to go to the blues here in the color slice tool, and we're going to change the hue a little bit. We want it to be a bit more green. And just like that, we matched them up pretty close. It wasn't that hard just to make a couple adjustments, but I'm just here to show you that they aren't exactly the same and that you're going to have to do a bit of tweaking if you want to use similar LUTs. And when it comes to detail, the ProRes Raw looks a little bit more natural and H.265 is a bit softer. So here's the thing, as cool as ProRes Raw is to have on an iPhone, it's awesome that Apple even added it because they didn't have to. I just don't think it's going to be worth it for 99.9% of people that are buying this phone. You're going to lose all stabilization. You're going to get all those little micro jitters unless you use a gimbal or a tripod. So handheld shots are not going to look that great unless you want the shaky look. But one thing that's a massive headache is that the autofocus is so inconsistent with the Blackmagic camera app on the main camera. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it doesn't work. And this only happens in ProRes Raw. I haven't seen too many people mention it online. No one's really talking about it. And I assume it's an iOS thing because I've had the same issue with the Final Cut app. I tried it on different iPhones and I had the same problem. I haven't seen a fix for it. You can toggle in and out of media back to the camera. Sometimes it'll come back. Sometimes you close the app and open it, or sometimes it'll work. I don't know. I really hope this gets fixed because it's super annoying. I was pulling my hair out. Even just to film this, it took me like 15 minutes to get the autofocus to work. And I think, yeah, now it's working. But yeah, super annoying. And the file sizes are massive. So right now it's averaging around 4 gigabytes every 30 seconds. So you're gonna fill up a drive pretty fast. It's like shooting with a real cinema camera. Now that's just ProRes Raw, normal ProRes Raw, not ProRes Raw HQ, which is even bigger. That's just gonna rip through data. And you're also limited to the phone's native focal lengths. So 13mm, 24mm, and 100mm. So the 0.5, the 1x, and the 4x. You can't zoom in, you can't do any digital stuff. Because it's just using the native sensors data off that focal length. And on top of that, you actually need an external drive to even record ProRes Raw. And I've been using 2 different drives from Lexar. One of them is the Professional Go SSD, which is what I'm using right now. And the other is this one. This is the ES5 MagSafe SSD. They're both great options, but I personally prefer the Go SSD because it's a little bit smaller. Now I also showed this. This is Freewell's Pro SSD hub, which I put a 2 terabyte NVMe drive in it. You could put a 4 terabyte drive, an 8 terabyte drive, whatever you want. This thing's really good. It has a nice hand grip and stuff, but that's only if you really wanted to rig up your phone into something a little bit bigger. All right, so let's wrap this up because it's getting way too long. The fact that the iPhone 17 Pro can even shoot ProRes Raw and OpenGate is insane. Like I never expected to see that 10 years ago. It's wild that we have those options in a phone now. But the question is, would I use it every day? Probably not. Unless you really need the flexibility for color grading, you're not gonna really need it. The trade-offs just don't make sense. For most creators, and I'm saying creators because the average person will never shoot an Apple log or even care that their phone can shoot ProRes Raw. I think that Apple Log 2 paired with H.265 in the Blackmagic camera app is kind of the sweet spot. You get all your stabilized footage, you can use all the different camera focal lengths, the file sizes are more manageable, and you still get tons of dynamic range and a great looking image without that iPhone HDR tone mapping you get just using the native camera app. And the image looks incredible. I've actually been sneaking in iPhone footage into my videos over the past year, and I don't think most of you guys would even notice, which kind of says a lot about how far the iPhones come when it comes to video quality. But I would not upgrade to the iPhone 17 Pro just because it has ProRes Raw. Honestly, the only reason why I think you should upgrade is probably for the better thermal performance, because if you've ever shot video with the iPhone 16 Pro, 15 Pro, the screen goes dim instantly when it gets hot. So on the iPhone 17 Pro, I haven't really been seeing that. Yeah, so RAW in a phone is super impressive, but I think that Apple Log 2 is kind of where the magic happens. Big thanks to Freewell for sponsoring this video and sending over all this different gear and accessories I have now. I'll have everything linked below in the description. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to give it a thumbs up. If you dislike this video, give it a thumbs down twice. Don't forget to hit that notification bell. See you guys in the next one.